Erin Rose Sullivan, head of museums and cultural heritage at So Real. Thanks for joining us. And just why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what So Real does?
So Real is a startup based in Switzerland, and we really sit at the convergence of art, imaging, and physics by helping reinvent precision modeling in technology for XR, AR, and all sorts of new experiences.
So you are head of museums and cultural heritage at So Real. So what exactly is So Real's engagement in the cultural heritage sector?
It's so real. We're really about making the world smaller while making sort of our dreams bigger. And that's really about bringing immersion into objects and creating immersive experiences because we believe that drives empathy and understanding. So, like, if you want to go understand another language or another culture, you'd often have to get on a plane and go there to fully immerse yourself in experience. And as we know right now, we can't do that. But what if that's just not possible. Now we can experience things through objects, through immersive experiences, and have that richness as if we are there.
What do you think, in terms of the cultural heritage space and museums and galleries, what do you think is the major challenge to them adopting these new technologies, like in the XR area that you work in?
I think there's a few challenges. I think there, when you this is what we're creating in these digital objects is part of a digital transformation for museums. So you really have to think of the A to Z of that experience, and that is in many ways a shift for museums. And equally, if they've started early on plans, or made decisions that weren't really future proof, they might be a little bit reluctant to restart again. So there's a couple things in the space for what we do in like the digital transformation in museums, that it's about really ensuring you have a strong foundation to build upon. And I think that sometimes that's scary, and equally there that sort of maybe lack of knowledge previously of that future proofing. As museums in this current period, really the only way forward is digital transformation because of the time we're in today, but equally from an archiving perspective, from a cataloging perspective, from an education perspective, it's the back end of what happens with museums and that sharing and the learning that happens from an academic field to end visitors to museums. So so many experiences with it within a consumer, and that's inner key. But there's so much more. There is the learning from that in academics. Imagine if it was a bug on a pin. The ability and the ability to see everything within that is even better than a microscope in many ways because of all the 3D and internals. And now imagine you don't have to send it. Imagine all the metadata that's with it. So you're keeping the history on that object with that object. So this really amplifies what you're capable of doing and what's possible for a museum beyond the incredibly important end experience with a visitor. That's absolutely important, but there's so much behind that you have with these objects.
Have you seen a large uptick in interest in this type of technology during this period of COVID? I mean, have museums shown much more interest in this period, or is it difficult because they're not really operating now?
It's a mixture, like certain museums, there's that active and reactive stage. So you're trying to figure out how do we keep the lights on right now. So there's certain things you're doing with what you have in the short term, and then you're able to start shift into the mid to long term thinking. So I think after this 10 to 11 months, they've been able to shift out of the sort of like survival mode and get into, okay, now we need to start thinking longer term. We need to a preparation. This is kind of, we've done a lot of learnings in this year as well. I think 2020 was a learning year in many ways for museums of like what's working. And now 2021 is like, let's take those learnings from that and let's see how we can be a bit smarter and we can be a bit tighter. And now okay, now what do we need to start investing in? So now you're starting to see this kind of shocking experience that has occurred for this past year, that now museums are like, okay, now we need to start working on foundations. And now we've learned what's working and why that didn't work. So it was sort of a shock and awe year, painful, but giving much learning as well.
Okay, last question. What is your vision for surreal in the future in the sector of cultural heritage museums? What do you see? What's your goal for the next few years for surreal?
I mean, our goal is to be part of providing access to art and cultural heritage. Where we are today is based on all of those before us and what they learned and their experiences and what they built and innovated and shared. And it's so real. We want to help ensure that that understanding continues to enrich future generations.
And Rose Sullivan, head of museums and cultural heritage at Surreal. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being a part of this project.
Thank you, Neil.